It's really important to get influenza vaccine every year. This is a very clever virus and it tries to change a little bit to avoid the effect of the vaccine. It's a little bit like having a passport photo that we recognise, and then the virus goes to the beautician, changes its hair colour, changes its characteristics. We're looking for the passport photo with our antibodies and we don't recognise it. So each year we make a new influenza vaccine based on what we think is circulating at the time, and you need the new protection. Even in those years where we don't change the vaccine, you need to get a boost to the antibodies you have in your body, so it's important to get the flu vaccine even if the composition's the same. You can't get influenza from the influenza vaccine. This is a small killed bit of protein and that's all that's in the vaccine. If I take your mobile phone and throw it up against a wall and break it into pieces, and I take a little bit of glass that's left on the floor, I can't check Facebook on the little bit of glass that I've picked up from your mobile phone. I take the flu virus, I put it into a machine in the lab and I smash it into little pieces, and we take a couple of those little pieces that the body will recognise and make antibodies, and that's all that the flu vaccine is, a couple of little bits of protein. So you can't get influenza from the influenza vaccine. Influenza is very different to the common cold. Many people call every winter virus the flu and they think the flu's not that bad. But those people who get other winter viruses that aren't influenza often get a stuffy head, they get a mild fever, they feel a bit unwell or clogged, but they're not getting influenza. If you get influenza, you are severely ill. You'll have muscle aches, your whole body will feel bad, you'll have a very big fever, and sometimes you have serious complications and end up in hospital. Somebody once said to me that the first 2 days they had the flu, they were worried they were going to die. And then the next 2 days they were worried that they wouldn't die and that they had to keep putting up with the flu. So this is a serious disease. We know that there are over 300,000 consultations of general practice every year, and around 18,000 hospitalisations, and about 1,500 to 2,000 people, mainly in the elderly, die of the flu. So it's not the common cold, it's a very serious disease. I know a lot of people who feel that if they're looking after themselves, that they're eating well, and then they won't get influenza. And it's important to look after yourself as much as possible and have a healthy diet. But influenza is going to attack people whether they're healthy or unhealthy, whether they have chronic disease or not. We hope that if you are healthy and living right and you get influenza, that it's not as severe a disease as it could be if you're not looking after yourself. But living well won't prevent you getting infected, and it won't prevent you passing it on to other people in your family, maybe your grandparents, mainly vulnerable people you come in contact with. And so even if you believe that you're not going to get the flu, or you won't be impacted by it, you can be unlucky and have severe disease even though you're healthy, and you can pass it on and give severe disease to somebody else. So even if you're healthy, it's important to have an influenza vaccine every year. Some people think that every winter virus is influenza, so they have a flu shot and then they get RSV or one of the other winter viruses, and they think, well, the flu vaccine didn't work, that wasn't much good. But it's not protecting you against other viruses, just against the very severe influenza that you can get. The other thing is that it takes 2 weeks for the vaccine to work. So if you have your shot and then you get sick a week later, we won't have given vaccine time for it to actually work. We know this is not a perfect vaccine, and we know that there are some people who have an influenza vaccine and then get influenza. But they always get milder disease if they've had the vaccine, and we do know that even though the vaccine's not perfect, having some protection is much better than having no protection at all. This is a view that I've heard some people promote in the community. It's a very dangerous view. It's dangerous for you, it's dangerous for your family, and it's dangerous for the community. Some of the people who are hospitalised, end up in ICU and end up passing away, are actually healthy people, not very old people with severe disease. And so feeling that it's good for you to get the flu places you at risk. And even if you're young and fit, you may not have as severe a disease as someone who's 85 and in a nursing home, but certainly you are still at risk. And you're a risk to your family. If you don't get vaccinated and you get the flu, you may give it to your young children, you may give it to a pregnant relative, you may give it to a grandparent. And so having a lot of people decide that is going to mean we're going to see a lot more flu in the community, a lot more transmission, and a lot more risk, not just to you, but the ones that are vulnerable in community and the ones that you love. Pregnant women should absolutely get an influenza vaccine at any stage of the pregnancy every year. We know that some years when certain types of influenza virus are circulating, particularly the influenza A, H1N1 and the influenza B, pregnant women are more prone to develop infection and they're more prone to have very severe disease. And each year when that happens, I see many pregnant women in my ICU. I see pregnant women who lose their babies. I see pregnant women who pass away, and some of whom spend weeks on ventilators in the hope that we can save them by pumping their blood through machines to give them some oxygen. WHO has said that pregnant women are the priority group above the elderly and every other to get vaccinated. This vaccine is a little bit of protein. It can't affect you or your baby if you're pregnant. It is critical to protect yourself. And the other benefit is that if you protect yourself, you will give antibodies to your baby when your baby's born, and your baby will be protected against influenza when they're really at risk in the first 6 months of life. One of the things that's not well known about influenza is that every year in Australia, around 15 children die just from influenza. Half of those children have nothing else wrong with them. They're not asthmatic or got chronic diseases. They're just young children who develop the flu. We know that hospitalisation rates in the very young are actually worse than in the very old. In those children under the age of 1, we see lots of people hospitalised in that age group from influenza. These vaccines are very, very safe from the age of 6 months onwards. And so if you have a child between the ages of 6 months and 5 years in particular, it is critical that you make sure that when they're getting their other vaccines, or when you have the opportunity, that you take them to your general practitioner and make sure that they're vaccinated against influenza.